Hello, everyone. I am Dr. John Glenn Ramon. I'm tasked to do a presentation for you on how to judge for our campus level science fair. As you very well know, this year, due to circumstances beyond our control, we had to shift to a virtual mode of evaluating our projects. And with that, came the task of orienting the judges how to do judging and how to navigate the website and how to use the apps that we're going to be using for judging. If you're watching this presentation, first and foremost, I'm going to thank you already for spending some time during the holidays to help us in evaluating the projects of our students. To begin with, I'd like to start with sharing with you the rationale and the purpose for doing science fair. Really, the reason for that is to provide an opportunity for students to be able to apply their knowledge on the scientific process as a framework for problem solving. What kind of problems? Real world problems, problems that they see around their community, their environment, the questions that they've always thought about, have been curious about, but have never found the answer to. That's the whole basis of doing science and engineering fair in our classrooms. And we integrated in our pre-AP or honors gifted and talented science classes at all levels. This year, we're going to be doing two phases of judging. In fact, this is not really something new. We do this already in the past years that we've been doing science fair. We've been doing two phases already. Phase one used to be a classroom level competition where the teacher is the one who evaluates the projects, and out of that, the teacher recommends or chooses 3 to 4 projects per section to move up to the campus level science fair. This happens typically over the first week of school. Teachers usually evaluate the project over the winter break so that by the time we come back, they already have a pretty good idea what project they want to recommend, and they are just confirming it in their classrooms. This year, we don't have that luxury. The other thing is that science fair is supposed to be a poster board presentation, but we're converting it to a narrated video presentation. And out of those 3 to 4, we accumulate those and we designate a day, usually second week of January, for us to do a live presentation where we gather all the participants in the library, and that's when we do the actual judging. And the purpose for that is to identify projects that would qualify and move on to the regional fair, which is called SEFH, or Science and Engineering Fair of Houston, where they get to compete with around 700 other projects from other schools in the Houston area. So the timeline this year is that we're going to start from the 28th of December for phase one judging and run through till the 5th of January. This is not a hard deadline, so we can extend this further than that because we know that some students are still completing their projects. As soon as they get completed, they get added to the projects that needs to be judged. Now, I'd like to give you a bit more information about phase one judging, which is what we're going to be doing this next week. What do you expect out of the phase one judging? Well, because this is equivalent to the classroom level presentations and competition, I would caution you not to get your expectations very high. No one has actually seen their presentations yet. So don't expect that all the projects are going to be high quality. Some students are actually just doing this for requirement purposes. And so while every student is required to do the project, a lot of them are probably going to be doing it for compliance. So expect a very wide range of quality in terms of content, in terms of presentation, and in terms of scientific rigor. So with that said, what are the guidelines? The first thing you need to remember as a judge is you are not giving a grade. While students are going to receive a grade for their project, that's their teacher's role to give them their grade. Your role is not to give them a grade. So when you're evaluating, don't think that you're giving them a pass or fail grade. You're simply giving them a rating. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, the idea is that you're giving them something that they can work with, a constructive feedback, and you're giving it to actually two different entities. The first one is, of course, the presenters themselves. You're giving them a numerical rating just to give them an idea of where they stand at, but really what is most important for them are the comments, because that is what they can work with, they can reflect on, and they can evaluate their performance and make improvements in the future. So that's really the most important part for them. The second entity is for the teachers. For us who are conducting the science and engineering fair, we want to shortlist all the projects to really those projects that are worthy of moving on to phase two judging. And the way we would do that is there is one part in the whole evaluation where we're going to ask you what is your degree of recommending the project that you just rated in terms of participating in phase two, and why is your rating that way. The next couple of slides will go through the details of that. Now, what's the mindset and what's the framework for phase one judging? Well, we'll try to minimize bias. I understand that there is no way to eliminate it. We just need to minimize it. Also, we would expect you to do relative rating. So I'll explain that further in a minute. And I would caution you when it comes to giving extreme grade. I would reckon that there would be no perfect project, and therefore 10 is actually very, very extreme of a grade. Also, if the student is doing a presentation, they would have exerted some effort, so there is no way that they are probably going to have a 0 for that, right? And so try to avoid extreme grading. So with that said, you're going to rate the projects according to 5 areas, and those 5 areas are further divided into 2 subcategories. So each area is worth 20 points, but each category is worth 10 points. So you're going to rate them from 0 to 10. Now, I know that some are lenient, some are very strict, and so we would like to eliminate that by saying that the very first project you rate, we would like you to start by rating them close to a 5. It doesn't really matter whether you think they're very high or very low. We would like you to actually think about central tendency. Rate them somewhere in between 4 and 6. That would be a good range to start with. In that way, what you want to do when it comes to relative rating is the next project you view, you rate them against the first one that you saw. And I understand that everyone will have different biases when it comes to that. But if you start working in the middle, then you have some wiggle room to expand lower or expand higher than the first project. And it doesn't matter whether you go from 5 to 9 or 5 to 1, that's the best project that you saw. What we want you to do is to rate the projects relative to one another. Don't give them absolute grades. Again, don't come into the mindset, into judging with the mindset that you're giving a grade. You're not. You're simply giving them a rating based on the multitude of projects that you have viewed. So we would really, really appreciate if you try to do it with a central tendency idea. In that way, we can actually apply statistical techniques to be able to eliminate the bias further, as long as you don't do extreme grading. So with that said, what are the 5 areas that you would be rating the students on? The first area would be project objective. Under project objectives, these are the 2 subcategories that you're going to be rating them on. It's rationale and hypothesis and the background research. The whole idea here is that did the student present their problem well? Did they define it well? Or if it's an engineering project, did they define their engineering goal well? Was there a hypothesis for a science project? Is the hypothesis consistent with the problem? Because the hypothesis is supposed to be answering the problem. Did they identify their variables? Was it obvious and clear in their presentation? And what's the extent of their background knowledge on their research? Because that is what's gonna give relevance to their project. What's the rationale of them doing the research? The second area would be project design. Here, you want to evaluate the soundness of the project in terms of the scientific concepts applied, as well as the soundness of the methods applied. Did they consider everything in terms of creating their procedure? Did they pay attention to safety? Did they pay attention to holding the correct variables constant? Did they consider all of those? Did they consider sample size? So those are the things that you would like to look at. Now, in terms of soundness of the project, is the science behind the project well-founded? Or is it contradictory to well-established scientific principles? Okay, so those are the things that you would like to evaluate the project on. The third area would be project execution. This is where you would look into how did the students gathered their data. Were they thorough enough? Did they apply skills that are commensurate and appropriate for, or at least on par with the rigor of the scientific investigation that they were doing? Okay, so that's what you want to evaluate in area 3. Okay, the project execution. Did they gather enough data? So basically what you're implementing here, what you're evaluating here is how well did they implement their procedure. And then the last area on the content would be project conclusion. How did they treat their data? Did they apply statistics to it to eliminate bias, to identify outliers, to be able to do a good presentation of the data? Did they actually present it logically? Did they do treatment of the data so that it's visual? Remember, this is a video presentation and a poster presentation before. So raw data should not have any place in the presentation. It has to be treated data. Did they present enough data to begin with? Did they do error analysis? And did they apply or address inconsistencies if there are any? Did they make a solid conclusion on their hypothesis? Or if it's an engineering goal, did they meet their goal? That's what you want to evaluate here. And then the last area would be on presentation. Again, this is not about content. This is purely about how they presented the whole project. And basically, it comes in two parts. Their oral presentation, which is basically how they presented their video. Did they cover enough information? Were they speaking loud enough? And the quality of the actual presentation itself. Was there enough information there? Was it organized well? So when they did their presentation, you get a full story of what their research is all about. So those are the 5 areas that you want to evaluate on. Now, the last question you're going to be asked is this one, which is what I alluded to at the end. This is where you address if the project is worthy for moving into phase 2. Let us know what your degree of confidence. Are you recommending this without any reservations, or you have some reservations, or you're not recommending it with some reservations, or you're not recommending it at all? There is a follow-up question on that when it comes to overall comments and remarks. Here is where you would want to let us know why you said it when it comes to recommending the project for phase 2. Now, I might add that in each area 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, there is a space for comment. That is where we are highly encouraging you to give comments, the project that you're rating, because this is what's going to be passed on to the students without identifiers, just the comments, for them to have a better understanding of how they did with their project overall. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone again for volunteering your time. I look forward to your evaluations of our students' project. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to get in touch with Miss Chelsea Baker, our Hightower High School Science and Engineering Fair Coordinator, and yours truly. So with that, happy judging, everyone.